Hey, welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us today at this new time at noon today for our monthly get-together with Stuart Stevens. Stuart, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me to the party, man.
Listen, for those of you who don't know Stuart, and I don't know that there's anybody who doesn't know Stuart, he's one of the most influential media consultants of our time. Used to be on the other side.
You have to rub it in.
Now we're joined at the hip in this pro-democracy, this dysfunctional pro-democracy movement that we're all part of. Glorious, joyous pro-democracy movement.
One of the more successful serial killers of our time. It's like, great.
Founder of Lincoln Project, founder of Lincoln Square Media, just all-around smart guy, and somebody who I really enjoy getting to talk to once a month. It's one of my highlights of my work here at Hopium. And Stuart, welcome. Listen, I don't know if you've been to Ukraine. I mean, one of the things we always talk about is that, you are a committed Ukrainian patriot. And hold on a second. Let me just make sure am I still with you?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, something as I was explaining, my computer's been rebooting this morning and it's been a little bit awkward, but you've been a committed Ukrainian patriot and a defender of Ukraine. We have the NATO meeting coming up this week. Perhaps you could just reflect on your current thinking about what we're seeing over there.
Yeah, look, I think Ukraine is winning. I think they're winning at an accelerating rate. The technological edge that Ukraine has is just going to increase. The massive number of Russian casualties, it's staggering. When you think it took 10,000 dead and they left Afghanistan, now for the first time, really probably since the Civil War, they have more dead than wounded on the Russian side because they do such a terrible job and don't care about trying to rescue and save those who have been wounded. It's when you go over there and you talk to people who have been involved in the war since, the first day, literally, they just say it's an entirely different war now. They look back on those first couple of years, really, and it's like sort of something from another era. 80% of all casualties come from drones, increasingly powered by AI. You look at what the Ukrainians are doing, hitting Russia, hitting Moscow. I think of Putin as a guy walking around with a paper bag full of water. It's probably not going to leak, but when it goes, it's really going to go. And, these horrible attacks on Kyiv, but, Kyiv is a huge city. And we don't know exactly how many Ukrainians now are in there in the country, but, 33, 34 million. If anybody's thinking about going to visit Ukraine, visit Kyiv, I would encourage them to do it. Not let these headlines worry you. I think that in Kyiv, they've really decided that resistance, living a normal life is part of resistance. It's shameful that we're not helping. Really, I mean, we're almost de facto on the Russian side now. But at the end of this, American military is going to need Ukraine more than Ukraine needs the American military, because Ukraine is just going to be so much more advanced. So look, I find it very inspiring and humbling. You think what it's like to grow up as a young Ukrainian now and being able to look at these leaders, not just Zelensky, but across the board. I mean, odds are that your sixth grade homeroom teacher, she's now fighting, or a medic, or everybody's involved in the war. And it's really extraordinary.
I think it's important to note for those who don't follow the war that closely that Ukraine is striking military and industrial targets in Russia. They're really focusing now on disabling the war machine and all of it moving backwards back to production facilities. And this weekend it was reported that they hit a meeting where there were planners who were engineers and people who were behind the Russian war machine. They've hit the refinery capacity of Russia, which is now creating, shockingly, Russia's now having fuel shortages. It's affecting all parts of Russian life, and including transportation of food and other things in the country itself. And then Russia responds with bombing apartment buildings with people in them in the middle of the night. When they're sleeping.
Trying to hit anything militarily now.
Yeah, it's a terror regime using ballistic missiles. And one of the stories of the weekend is that on the eve of this NATO meeting, and we know that Putin and Trump spoke for over an hour over the weekend, which is never good because Trump seems to I think when Putin always gets hardened by these calls and then does more extraordinary things. But we apparently have been really we've been cutting back on our support of the air defense system in Ukraine, which is one of the things enabling these ballistic missile attacks. And so, again, this whole issue of Trump, a core element of Trumpism, and we've talked about this here, Stuart, a lot when we've gotten together, is that despite everything that's happening, Trump is still going out of his way to support Putin, even though Putin was an ally of Iran in the war that we're in Iran, right? I mean, this sort of, right, helping target and kill Americans and disable, attacking our military bases, and just the incoherence and insanity of all this is hard to really put into words.
Yeah, it's a shameful chapter. I don't think we talk enough about how there is a large segment of the Republican Party that looks at Russia and they say, okay, it's run by white men. They're all Christians. There are no gays in Russia, Putin says. So, glad we cleared that up. No women are in power. They have elections that are performative but not decisive. They go, what's the problem here? I mean, tell me Ron DeSantis doesn't want that. Tell me J.D. Vance doesn't want that. And it's a complete rejection of American ideals of having a pluralistic democratic society. I mean, Donald Trump is going to lose two wars. He's going to lose the Iran war, and he's going to lose Ukraine. Not that Ukraine is going to lose, but America is going to emerge from Ukraine as a loser. And it is so shameful for these Republicans like Roger Wicker, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, who I think cares deeply about Ukraine. And yet, so what? He's like he looks at his position as sort of an editorial writer. He's going to offer an opinion, and if the boss doesn't agree with it, okay, fine, we'll go with it. But it's there are moments you look back on in American history and say, how did this happen? This is shameful, and I think this is going to be one. But Ukraine is winning. And they know they're winning, and they know that to lose is to become slaves, and they're not going to lose. They would fight to the last man and woman.
Well, speaking of campaigns that Trump is going to lose, let's talk about the 2026 elections for a minute. In some ways, the big development in our sort of the commentary around the election happened last week, where we had two sets of very detailed polling from the New York Times and Fox News of the Senate battlegrounds. We haven't had that much polling this year.
Right.
This is part of the sort of the weakening of legacy media, that polling is becoming sort of independent legacy media polling is becoming far less frequent, which is frankly not a good thing for us in the country, that a higher percentage of the polling that we get have some kind of partisan lean to it, which is not great for understanding where these races are. And so what was amazing to me, and we were discussing earlier before we came on, Stuart, that about some of the stuff I've written the last few days, is that 6 months ago, 9 months ago, in our conversations like this, the idea that we could have public polling, independent polling, showing us ahead in Ohio, Iowa, Alaska, large leads in North Carolina and Georgia, modest lead in Maine, not as big as it was. Tallarico being competitive in Texas. I'm sure I'm leaving out the state. It's shocking how in these states that were plus 10, plus 12, plus 15 Trump, we now have a shot of winning. And I just wondered if you could, given all of your years being in the game, can create some context for how remarkable this data is actually, and the opportunity that we now have. And because I still, every time I see this kind of data, I still am surprised, to be honest, that things have moved against not just Trump, right, but against Republicans as much as they have.
Well, look, I think it's a combination of factors. Classically, as you know better than anybody, ideally you have a good message and a good messenger, but you at least need one. And I don't think Republicans have one. On the message, I have no idea what their message is. I literally have no idea. And Democrats have better candidates. And, I've always said the secret of success of Republican as a consultant, Democrat or Republican, is to work for candidates who are going to win anyway and just don't fuck it up. And they have better candidates. And that's not always determinative any more than
we have better candidates.
Yes, Democrats have better candidates.
Yeah.
I guess I still say they, just out of sort of
and I wanted to help you there, Stuart.
No, I appreciate it. That's not always determinative in the same way, sometimes the best athletes do lose, but it sure helps. And I think that there is a dispirited mood that is taking Republicans now, sweeping across them. If you look at something like this housing initiative, it was just such a layup and a slam dunk. And Trump's like, no, I'm not going to sign this thing. And the way in which Trump has to make everything about Trump, which they shouldn't be surprised. But, how many races, it's a good sort of blood test of the healthiness of the patient, is how many races, which are within the margin of error, are the Republicans asking Donald Trump to come in and campaign?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be many. Trump is on the ballot. One of my annoyances here is this sort of obsession with the Democratic Party brand. Look, would it be better if the Democratic Party brand had a 40-point advantage? Yeah, sure, of course. But does it matter? I don't really think so, because I don't think people are voting for parties. And they haven't for a good while. If you go back to New Jersey and Virginia, where these candidates won with 10 plus points in states where I've helped elect Republican governors. And Democratic Party didn't have great numbers, but it's not why you're running. You're running because you want to help people, and people respond to that. I look at this talk about internal fight inside the Democratic Party about, the Mondami faction or AOC versus, a more conservative faction. I say, that's the kind of problem you want to have. You want a party that's having, like, are we too big a tent? And, if I was a Democrat, I would not be worried about this. There is no conservative party in America. I mean, you look at Mondami, I'd argue he's to the right of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is nationalizing Intel. All Mondami wants is like maybe 5 grocery stores that are run by the city. And he's a tremendously likable candidate. But look, I think that we're in a series of change elections. 16 was a change election. 20 was a change election. 24 was a change election. And this is going to be a change election. And the reason these candidates are doing well, who are sort of outside the Democratic mainstream traditionally is because they're doing a better job articulating change. And that's something you should embrace, not run away from. So, I hate it when Democrats don't defend Joe Biden, who I think was a tremendously successful president. And he's your guy. You should defend him. And I think Democrats just need to get more swagger. I just keep going back to this. We're right, they're wrong. There's more of us than there are of them. That's how you win elections, just by this sort of force of will that we are going to win. We should win. The country's better off if we win. And not to hesitate labeling in big, sweeping pejoratives Republicans. I mean, I would not hesitate to say, if you vote for Pete Hegseth, you're not a patriot. I'm sorry. You may think you are. You may call yourself one, but you're not. You apparent a town drunk, creepo guy who knows nothing is head of the military of the United States, and he's just lost a fucking war with Iran.
And ridiculous hair, by the way. Ridiculous hair to add to your litany of things.
And, I would say that. The only reason that Pete Hegseth is in charge is not so much because of Trump, but because the Republicans voted for him. And same with Kristi Noem. They voted for her. Same with this mob lawyer who's running the Justice Department now. There's 250 FBI agents who were just assigned to investigate ballots from the 2020 election in Georgia. I mean, if you're like a child predator or sex trafficker, that's like a holiday. That means 250 fewer well-trained agents are coming after your ass, and they're going to sit in a room and look for something that everybody knows isn't there. It's so much for us being Republicans being the party of strength, the party of law and order. So, look, I would not hesitate to be talking about big wins and talking about what you're going to do. And, you've articulated this brilliantly. It can't be about restoration. It has to be about reform. Yeah. Big sweeping ideas. And, to me, I think that it's absolutely critical that Democrats articulate a process by which the criminality of the Trump administration will be held accountable. I mean, this whole thing is going to be a failure if not a failure, but it'll be a big disappointment if it's 2030 and, Stephen Miller has not been tried or his own tried or is not living in a country that has no extradition treaty. He's a criminal. And traditionally, we like to go after criminals. So,
and let me talk about that for a second, because it's something I wrote a piece about this over the weekend. That and I interviewed Mark Elias last week, and we had a long discussion. Of this. Democrats, the way that I've been articulating this through, and I want to just build on what you said, and I want to get your reaction to this, is that we have been told by some of the data bros in our family and some of their followers in the family that we need to pivot everything back to kitchen table issues. And what I have argued in my writing is that that's a misread of the actual polling that's in front of us, where there is an incredible amount. There's a huge appetite in the 60 to 65% of the country that's available to us. I mean, the thing is that one of the games that people play is they use most important issue for all voters, when we should be, peeling off the 35% that are MAGA that we're never going to be able to reach. And we got to concentrate our communications in that 65% that are available to us, whatever the number is, 60%, 70%, 65%. And in that universe, polling since last summer of last year has shown that threats to democracy, corruption, the integrity of our electoral system is a top tier voting issue. It was the number one issue, the number one or number two issue in the exit polls in 2024, but it's also been up here. The second thing is that, I did this interview with a guy named Hardy Merriman, who has spent his adult life working to prevent backsliding in democracies around the world and to help countries recover once they have slid backwards. And one of the things he told us, and you should have him on, you should interview him, by the way, and give him airtime, is he said one of the lessons that he's learned from doing this around the world is that if you want accountability and if you want to change the political system and if you want to put the bad guys, in jail, you have to campaign on it so that you have you have a mandate to do it. And pivoting, staying focused on kitchen table issues is preventing us from creating a mandate. The final point I just want to make on this is that I was in a meeting last week with a prominent congressional Democrat who said, the big lesson of Hungary is that Peter Magyar ran on kitchen table issues. And I couldn't believe what I heard, because it's so obviously not true that happened. I mean, he ran. And one of the things I went back and looked and did research. Peter Magyar developed a 240-page policy agenda 6 months before the election on every possible issue under the sun that was developed with academics and policy people. And they had a wildly detailed agenda. And of course, they ran on reassociating, Hungary with Europe, away from Russia and the corruption of Russia. And the idea that you could have looked at that election, that world-altering election, the overturning of Orban, and believe that somehow the only thing that mattered in that race was about people's costs is sort of almost the worst kind of manifestation of consultantitis that you could possibly imagine. And I want to encourage you, Stuart, I think, and all of your adjacent projects, to really take this on in the coming months about the need for Democrats to run on a cogent and clear accountability agenda, reform agenda, pro-democracy agenda, whatever it is, and go to the American people and say, if we win, this is what we're going to do. And to make this part of the discourse. I think without it, we don't have the mandate. But the other thing we don't have is that we're not speaking to one of the central issues of the election. And it's making us smaller rather than bigger. And in every election, you want your candidates to get bigger and not smaller as you get close to the election. And I think we're purposely making ourselves smaller rather than bigger by not addressing the sort of, if we want to call it this, the big elephant in the room,
Yeah, I think this reading of polls to remind me of my deeply held beliefs is the crack, the heroin of polling. It's stupid. And the one thing that, I know about politics is a campaign and a candidate has to believe in something if you expect the electorate to believe in it. I don't remember, maybe I just missed it, 2007 poll that the number one issue in America was hope and change. I don't know. I kind of missed that. But a very good candidate made it to number one issue because he was able to articulate with passion what it meant. And McCain's slogan was America First, which I always thought would have worked better if Obama was running on America Second platform. It was like, okay, you could believe America First and still vote for Obama. Where is the passion here among voters? The passion is anti-Trump, what Trump has done, anti-MAGA. That is the driving force. And this, like Scott Galloway, I don't know if you follow Scott, but he brilliant guy, branding expert. But I'm writing a piece about now how he's completely wrong about how the Democratic Party should build a brand. The Trump campaign in 24, and I just found this astounding, did not run one positive ad. Not one. That's never happened before. And, some evidence to believe they did okay. They just tried to build the case against her and didn't make you love Trump. And okay, there's two people on the ballot, one's going to win. And I think that Democrats, if they don't go after that, and they don't talk about how America has this army of masked men chasing innocent people across America, it's a huge, huge lost opportunity. It's this weird need to normalize things that we have.
Yeah, I agree with
and
you.
It happens a lot in coverage. you know, I read so much that I think, well, like, okay, this is Dole versus Clinton, you know, except it's not fucking Dole versus Clinton. I work for Dole. And if you really believe this is part of the essence of challenging voters and Democrats, if you really believe this is an existential moment in American history, that Trump and MAGA is an existential threat, you don't sit around and say, yeah, but I really, this whole, I don't know, Mondami thing's kind of, what the fuck? You don't care. I mean, I seem to remember like Stalin sitting down with Roosevelt and Churchill. The only thing you care about is winning. The only reason these people are in power is because they won. Yeah. And every hour, every minute, criticizing the Democratic Party is a lost opportunity. You know, I just find this astounding that this is a media narrative, that when you have these drunks, weirdos, freaks, Russian agents running the government, and there's a national discussion of what's wrong with the Democratic Party, like, what? That's crazy. You know,
Stuart, let me get to one last question before I know you got to go soon. Is talk about your thoughts, your initial thoughts about how we should handle the Republican midterm convention now. That's on September 9th and 10th in Dallas. The White House has already described it as a Trumpapalooza, and that it's going to be, you know, 2 days of reflecting pool and fireworks and, you know, triumphal arches and, you know, military guys in military garb and all the, you know, the shit that he's going to roll out. What's your thought about how strategically we should be responding or thinking about how to counter as we head into September?
Yeah, you know, my normal advice working in presidential campaigns is when it's the other side's convention, just get out of the way. Don't try to fight it. Just, you know, so you're going to lose a few days of messaging. So what? It's not going to kill you. It's not why you're going to lose the race. However, I think every moment should be driven by one basic principle: attack, attack, attack. And when you get tired of attacking, attack harder. So that's what I would do. I wouldn't treat it any differently than I would treat anything. Just attack Trump. Whether or not he has this, you know, stupid convention, he still made $2 billion. He still has a cabinet of billionaires. He still has this crooked family. He still has a war that he lost. You know, that more people have been prosecuted for seashells than Jeffrey Epstein. And I would just keep going at that. And, you know, it'll be a few days and it'll be over. I think the one thing that every campaign has the exact same amount of is time. So how are you going to spend this time? And I think that Democrats have to prosecute. That should be their major, like their default. If you don't know what to do, attack. Now, there's different ways to attack, and there should be different ways. The way Tallarico attacks isn't going to be the same as the way, like a Mondami attacks or those candidates attack. It's different. But it should all be driven by arguments in front of a jury that the end will be these people are guilty. And I've always liked campaigns where you could run the first spot you did as your last spot. That it's sort of like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in this campaign, I'm going to prove the following. And then at the end, you go, ladies and gentlemen, we have proven the following. And I think that's, in fact, I've run the first commercial and the last commercial in many races. What do you get when you attack? You're not defending. You're not explaining. You're not apologizing. You just attack. Yeah,
and the other reason it matters so much, Stuart, and I'm grateful for the way you described this, because I think this is actually really central to everything that's going to happen. If you look at that Senate polling, you know, we're within margin of error in basically all those races. So shifting the national climate by another 2 points against Trump between now and election day could be the difference between us winning and losing the Senate. And so the ability to continue to drive down his approval rating, he's giving us an opportunity. I mean, this is the thing. We should view this, in my view, we should view this convention as an opportunity to continue to drive his numbers down and to make it more likely that these very close Senate races that are within margin.
There's no sane Democrat consultant in a tight race that is happy about this convention. Like at a time where, the last thing you want to talk about is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to make it inevitable. You have to talk about it.
I agree. I mean, it's a huge opening for us. And it's part of the reason I asked you is that I think this is a new thing, right? We haven't done this. We don't have a strong national party right now. Right? We have a Senate leader and a House leader and a DNC that is, sort of deferring to others right now in a midterm before the DNC sort of takes greater prominence next year in the presidential cycle. But we're going to need to be collectively very loud here. And I think there needs to be some public discussion about what that means, and how, because one of the things that I've been disappointed in, to be honest with you, is that I feel like the party that Schumer and Jeffries, the DNC, the Maine governors, the big attorneys general should have come together around a couple things that they worked on together, where there was a clear unified voice across the whole country to sort of be more muscular and more stronger. I think Trump wants us, he wants to divide and conquer. He wants us apart and not together, because we're stronger together and not apart. And I think that this couple days coming up in September is a real opening for us to do creative and powerful things together. And I hope you and your remarkable organization continue to air out, thinking about what we can be doing.
Every Republican on the ballot supports Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. Every Republican on the ballot supports a war that we lost. Every Republican on the ballot is responsible for record inflation and the lack of earning power, while others get rich. Every Republican's for that. And I would hold them accountable. Straight up. Why do you support Jeffrey Epstein's best friend? Why do you support this war that we lost? I think the problem that people have in campaigns sometimes is when you attack and it doesn't instantly change a race, you think the attack didn't work. No, it's the wrong conclusion. It means you need to keep attacking. It means you need to hit harder. We lost Vietnam, but it didn't mean that helicopters don't work. That wasn't the right lesson from it. They just weren't maybe, used in the right way. And there was sort of other factors. So this is the danger of tracking. You go out with a message and it hasn't changed anything. It's just not how politics should work. Let me tell you, man, there wasn't any focus group that said Willie Horton was really a great idea. I promise you. People didn't see that spot and go, oh, I love that. You really should run more of that. But they attacked. And that's usually the most aggressive candidate wins debates, and usually the most aggressive candidate wins races. It's like sports. You watch these World Cup races. The side that wants to win more, particularly now, is winning.
Oh, we saw that with Norway and Brazil yesterday. I mean, it was really. As a soccer fan, it was shocking how front-footed Norway was and how retreating Brazil was. It was a shocking reversal, and I hear you. Stuart, thank you for all that, because I think that we look. I think Democrats remain comfortable with sort of tactical maneuvers, and that we still struggle a bit with strategy and about sort of longer games and longer plays and things that require multiple steps in a chess match. I mean, I often have talked about how, a few years ago I was watching that great series the great show about chess and that young woman who played chess on Netflix. And I was a competitive chess player growing up, and I at one point I got burned out on it, and I stopped playing in middle school. And but I realized that the discipline of learning how to play chess has been very important to me in my work, because I was taught how to think things second order, third order, 4 or 5 orders. And we need now in this time, as a way to sort of wrap up, I think that we have to be thinking about the next 5 to 10 years, and not just about what's in front of us in this election, and about, how we're going to get us to the other side here and be building towards it, and not feeling like, well, we just win the election and then we go figure that out. And
you have to figure out what will happen. And I would include that if we win, we're going to prosecute Stephen Miller. If we win, we're going to prosecute the Trump family. If we win, we're going to go after all of this inside trading, all this crypto criminality. And otherwise, they're going to win.
Right.
And, paint that picture. If you want to wake up in the morning and see Stephen Miller in an orange jumpsuit, there's only one way.
Yeah. And the other thing, Trump said today in the White House, he said, I'm really now big into this crypto thing, as if that was an option for him while he was president. Right? I mean, he's just openly admitting that he's making new, look, it is remarkable. It is remarkable. And I think what he's also taught us, and this is stuff we've talked about, is that his strategy of just getting up every day and throwing shit against the wall and and forcing everybody to respond to the next new thing that he's doing. Never apologizing, and everything. What he's learned is that he can just make things just go away by continuing to, because we, first of all, I mean, one of the areas that, one of our greatest successes this cycle has been the way that we've handled the Epstein files. And, I give a lot of props to Katie Fang, who is winning in the courts now against the corrupt, attorney general nominee. And, but we stayed with it. Right. We stuck with the Epstein files. We didn't allow news cycles to flush it down the memory hole. And that's an important lesson for us, is that we have to stick with these things over time, and not feel, to your point, like if it's not working right away, you can't abandon it. You got to stick with it. And when it's right and true, and to not be so tactical, to not be so ephemeral, and not, I often talk about how one of the things I don't like, one of the words I don't really like in our politics is messaging, because I feel like messaging is something that's ephemeral, and people know it's ephemeral. It's a way of you bullshitting people, as opposed to conveying your core beliefs and your arguments and your values. And it feels cheap and ephemeral. And I think it's why I would love to, I wish we could move beyond that word, because I think it makes us weaker rather than stronger.
I couldn't agree more. And
and it's something you guys did, frankly. I mean, it's frankly, the messaging.
We did that. We won a lot of races we had no business winning because of that. Yeah. And just one thing on this polling, if I was doing polls, I would ask a couple of screening questions. One would be, who do you think won the 2020 election? And if you said Donald Trump, I'd just throw you out of the poll.
Right.
All you're doing is polluting the sample.
Yeah.
And then I would ask, do you think that races are being determined by voter fraud? And if you say yes, I just throw you out. But nothing you're going to say to these people. Go after the people that you might win. All you
are available to us.
One more vote. That's all that matters.
Stuart, how do people find you during the day? I mean, if they enjoyed, if they're new to you and they're new to Stuart Stevens' world, right? How do they find you?
I write for Lincoln Square. That's pretty much where all my writing goes these days. I'm pretty quiet at the moment on Twitter, because I just can't stomach it. So Lincoln Square would be the best. Yeah.
Congratulations on your success, your growth, your talk about being on the front foot. Lincoln Square is, producing an incredible amount of content every day. It's pretty impressive.
No, the Susan DeMoss and the whole Lincoln Square team has really done a great job.
They have.
One of the things I like about Lincoln Square is there's a diversity of opinion on it.
Yeah.
There's people that are writing that they think that Mondami is not great. There's people writing that think Mondami is going to save the party. And I think those kind of stuff's good. One of the things I liked about working in Israeli politics is pretty consistently the worst thing you would ever read about Israel, you'd read in an Israeli newspaper. That's
Israeli press is pretty brutal, man. The discourse there is pretty rough.
We
think it's bad here, man. Holy shit! In Israel,
I remember the first Likud convention I went to, and I asked somebody, "What's it going to be like?" And they said, "It's a cross between a Hezbollah funeral and a NASCAR race." And it turned out pretty much that's what it was. All right, buddy. Thank you.
Okay, my friend. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for your incredible work. Thank you for helping us get smarter and for staying in the fight. And folks, if you enjoyed this conversation today, hit like so more people will see it. Follow Stuart and support Lincoln Square. Subscribe to Hopium as well. And remember, everybody, we got to keep working hard because we got a country to save, elections to win, and a future to secure for our kids together. Thanks, everybody.